And I think, you know, as Americans, we're pretty good talkers. We're less good at listening. And I think that what you're doing with this program really represents an acknowledgement of the importance of embracing the change we're seeing in media today, shifting away from content and towards conversation. And that's a really profound shift. And I think that we as participants in that conversation are much more enriched if all of us are empowered to express ourselves well. And so I think it's a really admirable program, and it gets right at the core of something in our work at Solia that we think is really important for us to be aware of and honest about in the context of this shift. That yes, we are all now more empowered to express ourselves than ever before, and that's a really wonderful thing. It means that you know, kid in Gaza can write a blog and can tell his story or her story in a way that the world can see. But I think we also need to be honest with ourselves that the only way, you know, me growing up in North Carolina, United States, is going to see that blog is if I go there. Right now, because we're all able to express ourselves in new ways, it also means that we're able to seek out voices and storytellers that reinforce the way we want to see the world. So if I grow up in Ohio and I have my particular view of the world, well, I can go to Fox News and they'll tell me exactly what I want to hear. Particular foul-mouthed eloquence that I won't be able to recap, but he talked yesterday a bit about the bubbles that we all live in, and he was talking about those in the context of our networks of friends through which we get our information. But I think bubble is the right term, because we all do have borders to our spheres of information as well. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that while we do live in this time of profound connectivity where we can reach out and experience people from across the other side of the world, we often don't. And so I think that it's people like you, the ones in this room, who are ultimately going to answer this question as to whether or not we are connected. It's not about technology. I mean, you know, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, there's too much focus, in my opinion, on the platforms these days. It's more about the people. It's more about how do those people use these tools. And I think that we, and I think the YLVP is a great step in this direction, need to really put more emphasis and incentives on empowering people to pierce those other bubbles and expose people to other viewpoints. You know, for me as an individual, I grew up in America. I never left the country until I was 20. And so I was a pretty sheltered individual, and I got into working in television. I was a network news producer. I worked with ABC News, and I had the privilege of going to the Middle East and spending some time covering the situation in Israel-Palestine. And that was really a pretty profound experience for me. I ended up teaching at a Palestinian university, so I crossed the checkpoints every day in the Ford Transits, just with, you know, most other Palestinians. And it hit me really hard that I was seeing a very narrow part of this story. And it was very enriching for me to see these other stories. But I felt that our mainstream media wasn't doing enough to really enable other people to connect with the humans, you know, to connect with the personal part of the story, which was what was so important and influential upon me. So for me, after September 11th, I was in New York for September 11th, and a lot of these trends that I've been talking about only got worse. And it was very disturbing to me to see that the voices that were amplified through the American media and everywhere, frankly. I don't think America is uniquely, infected by this problem. I think every network is, prone to amplifying sort of our fears and displaying the stereotypes because it sells, because it connects with their audience. And so we've been doing this program for the last 6 years now, and we have about 2,500 young people who've gone through the program. We've worked with 60 universities in 25 countries. And now we're looking to really empower and inspire that community of alumni from our program to be intercultural mediators in their societies. So we're launching a new initiative, which you can see on our site. Maybe I'll ask Javeri if we can send out a link to folks who are interested after. where we are looking to bring together a select group of young adults from around the world, many, hopefully people as cool as yourselves, who will be empowered and inspired to do three things. First, we want to enable them to share perspectives from their societies with people in this online network. So go out into their communities with new media technologies and bring those voices that aren't heard often enough into the discussion. Then we want to empower that community to help amplify the constructive alternative voices. So the voices that, Jimmy in New York is empowered and incentivized to take that voice from Gaza that his friends haven't heard enough and distribute it through hopefully mainstream media outlets, but also through social media tools like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And then finally, we want to develop the skills and tools so that Johnny can host a meeting in his church group, let's say, and engage his community in a conversation, a constructive, respectful conversation where he brings Yasmin in from Gaza via video conference so that people are able to make that direct human connection while looking at this content. So I am very optimistic and very hopeful about the power of new technology to enable us to connect in new ways. But I do think that too often we put the emphasis on the platform and the technologies rather than the people. And I personally think that this program is so important because it does just that. I think it really looks at you all as the people who are ultimately going to decide whether or not we're connected. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to a discussion.